welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here, man. So,
Great to be here.
one of my very favorite things to do in Men's Alliance is do podcasts with tribesmen and just hear stories about, your journey and how you came to Christ and how you found Men's Alliance and what's going on in your life since. So tell us, introduce yourself, tell us your tribe and a little bit about your path.
Okay. Warrior. I'm at Grindstone and just finished Pat's class. Pat's class 41 for the one.
Yeah.
So, great experience there. So my story goes back, I guess, to growing up Catholic, very familiar with guilt and, kind of the
like
Catholic
a Christmas
way.
and Easter Catholic or like a devout?
No, not devout.
Okay.
My parents had split when I was really little, and my dad drank a lot, and he left, and raised with 3 siblings and myself, my mom, and so we grew up technically Catholic, but once I got to the confirmation part, and she said you can make your own choice, I chose to just walk away, and it never really walked away from God per se, but never really followed him either. Kind of felt like my life was good. Everything was fine. I was a good person. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do drugs. I didn't, I wasn't a real terrible guy. And then got through to into college, got into making some pretty bad choices with alcohol and things that, really didn't, that just some nights that, you wake up and you wonder how you got there. Mm-hmm. And could see myself going down the same road as my dad, even though he had never lived with me really, until like after I was 6. But just knew that it was kind of destructive behavior. But again, I hadn't done anything terrible. And I had met with my wife now in college, and we were the life of the party. We just, we always just had a good time wherever we went, and but I always felt like there was something missing. Like there was this sort of hole right here that, that never could be fulfilled with anything that I did. So prior to that, though, in high school, I had left, moved out with my dad. He lived in California. And it was a really difficult experience. My stepmom and I just didn't see eye to eye, and it was very, very difficult. But I met what would become my best friend on the first day at school there at the high school. And he and I did everything together. We were all the same interests and everything. So after graduation, moved back to live with my mom, went to college. And then after we got married, God had reconciled with my dad a bit, even though I didn't really realize it was him, because I still hadn't really pursued God at that point. But I always had these little seeds kind of planted in my life, And then it got to where we decided to go out to visit my dad in California. He wanted to meet my wife. And so, again, through a crazy God experience, managed to reconnect with my old buddy from high school, who I hadn't seen in about 7 years. And he had become a Christian in the meantime. And so he witnessed to my wife and I, and, and I thought, okay, well, that's cool. It's good for you, but just still didn't really feel like it was something that I needed to do, And
this was the friend that you met on the first day of high school?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So God reconnected us after 7 years.
Yeah.
And so he had this T-shirt, and I had a Harvest Crusade emblem right there. And I was talking to him about that, and he said, well, there's a big event at Anaheim Stadium, and we'd love to have you go. He was married, and so he and his wife invited us, and we thought, hey, we're on vacation, and honestly, we were very judgmental, as non-Christians sometimes can be. And I just, we were both kind of cynical, like, yeah, let's go maybe be a bunch of Amish people we'll go hang out with or whatever at this big event, And we got there, and the crazy thing was, the whole section we were in was full of teenagers. And they all had their Christian T-shirts, and they were all praising the Lord. It just sold out. And
wasn't what you thought.
Nothing at all like we thought. And so we're thinking, okay, this is not what we expected with like this whole God experience, So, so Greg Laurie comes up on stage and he's kind of preaching and so he gives this really amazing sermon and just really feeling the whole time like God was just pulling on both of us, like this is something you need to do. And so he gives the altar call and we're up in the nosebleed section in the outfield bleachers in Anaheim Stadium, and so we both looked at each other and we looked at Dave and he said, look, I'll go down with you if you want to go. So we said, all right, let's go. So we walked all the way down, got out there on the field, and it wasn't your traditional sort of conversion experience, I think, with a lot of people have. Like there's, they're just kind of broken and they're weeping. And there was a lot of that around us. But for me, kind of a funny experience. I'm walking across the outfield and my whole life, since when I was basically lower elementary school, I played baseball and always dreamed of playing professional baseball and things. And so here I am walking across Anaheim Stadium outfield and I'm looking across and I'm thinking, look how green this grass is. This is beautiful out here, and so we walk into the infield and finally get there, and there was about 3,000 people that had come down and all gave their life to the Lord on the same day, including my wife and I, and just really felt like this was it, and when I look back on it, I think, well, I don't have that. And when we first got saved, we don't have this big, I was a drug user and I've got, God did all these transformations in me. And so I'm thinking to myself, do I really have a testimony that people can relate to, But then God reminded us that, hey, I saved you from that.
Yeah.
And I kept you from all that. And, and now that this is where you are, and now I've got you on this road that you can, let others know that, hey, being good isn't good enough. Being the, making the right choices or whatever isn't enough to get you to heaven, doesn't seal your eternity with God, that it's only through that personal relationship and through accepting him as your Savior. So having that testimony, I think, is just as powerful as people that, say that I was at the lowest of low. And, but it's just,
sometimes we romanticize that testimony.
Exactly.
Right. But none of us as parents, want to create that testimony.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Exactly.
We want our kids to not have to go down that path.
Exactly.
Right. And I think one thing we need to do more of is to lift up and hold up in esteem those testimonies where the person never has to go down that
For
path.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. There's something to be said about not having to learn every lesson the hard way.
Yes. Yes. And then be able to pass those on to our boys to say, hey, don't do that. We didn't have to do that, but you don't either. So so now, kind of fast forward to about a year ago, our oldest son, who started going to Men's Alliance, and he came home one Saturday morning and said, "Dad, you got to go and check this out, man."
Oh, really?
This is
He
amazing.
got you?
He got me into it. Yeah.
Okay.
So
mission, right?
Mission. Yes.
Mission.
So he invited me. So the next Saturday, got up early and went and. And I've been involved in men's ministry at various levels, was involved with Promise Keepers for a number of years and different things. And, there was a lot of them that started really well, but never really finished well, or they kind of got into the right idea, but then for whatever reason, whether it's distractions or finances or whatever, it just never seemed to really, really take hold. And so, going to Tribe and and hearing the guys' testimonies and interacting with them and seeing that, and these guys are legit. They're for real. They're when they talk about doing life, they're doing life together. It's you have a problem or a concern, you make a phone call or text message, and you got people that are right there. And it really kind of hit home with me that this is really what men's ministry should be. And because it is, it's, the whole tribal rugged reel it's all of that, and being able to connect with these guys and being able to, to kind of pour into their life and let them pour into mine, has been just amazing. And then the extra blessing being able to go through patch class with my son.
Oh yeah.
And, and be in the same class together and get patched together was really very special. So
that's awesome.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How old was your son when he went?
That's exactly
to Tribe. Oh, really?
He started it was a year ago, so a month before a couple of weeks before I did, and so he was, what is he now, 27?
Okay.
28, yeah.
Okay.
So,
And so he was going a few times, and then he told you about
Yeah.
it. What'd you think when he asked you to go? Like initially, what was your first?
at first I was
reaction?
like, okay, I mean, I'm a morning guy anyway, right?
Okay.
So for me, I'd get up at 5, but by 10 o'clock at night, I'm done. Don't ask me anything. My wife's the opposite. I'll get up at 10 and she's up till midnight, 1 o'clock. But, so for me, getting up early wasn't a big deal, but I thought, well, this, I'll give it a shot. I really, we'd been at our church for probably at that point, a couple of years, maybe almost a couple of years, and didn't really have a lot of connections. There was a small group we were a part of, but it was, it's, you get into seasons, right? So we're kind of at that season where our boys were grown. They were, getting ready to get out of the house. Now they're both married. They both got married this summer and fall. So, and some of the other families in our small group had little kids. So, it's like, well, we were there, but we're not there now, And so sometimes it's hard to make those connections with people that are kind of at your life experience. So getting there the first time and just seeing, the workout, and of course I've always enjoyed physical activity and working out, being outside, I'd go camping every chance we get and that kind of stuff. So, so a lot of that really kind of spoke to me, kind of being real around the fire, the intense workout and all that. I was like, this is really what men should be doing.
Did you say what tribe you go to?
Grindstone.
Grindstone. What church is that?
Clover Hill.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So we meet Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. And so, we definitely see just the benefit of that kind of men's experience, and being able, like I said, to make those connections with guys that are, going through the same struggles that you are, and, and being so open and honest with it, it's nice. It's kind of refreshing. There's not a lot of that kind of, well, I'll pray for you, kind of thing. It's like, no, I'm going to pray for you right now, which is really nice.
That is a good way to explain the difference.
Yeah.
So where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college?
So we started off we graduated from the State University of New York.
Okay.
We were both grew up in upstate New York most of my whole life. We started off up in Plattsburgh, which is way up north in New York. Familiar with New York kind of layout at all. There's a little place called Santa's Workshop in the Wilmington area in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. And so there's North Pole, New York was the name of it. So I tell people that I was north of the North Pole. We're about 30 minutes from Canada. So I met my wife there, and then we both transferred to another state university closer to her hometown in the southern part of the state, and then graduated from there. Started off as a geology major. And then, thinking I was going to make all this money traveling the world working for an oil company, and then realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then, she actually got me into education, and she was already a math ed major, and, thought you'd really do really well with teaching. And I thought, yeah, but teachers don't make any money, So, but she talked me into it, so I changed my major and got into education. We both got our master's degrees there. Started teaching in upstate New York. I was an earth science teacher, and she's a math teacher.
Public school?
Public school originally, yeah. And then God called us to Virginia in 2004? No. Yes, 2004, 2005. Started working for Chesterfield County in the public school again. And then after a few years here, God said, it's time for a change for you guys. So here we are. I'm just about 40. She's a year younger than me. And feeling the call to go overseas as missionaries. And so, and I mean, that's probably another whole podcast, another whole story, but the short of it was God called us. We were obedient, sold everything we had, went overseas, went to Thailand, and spent 6 years doing missions work, working with missionary kids in education. Still, so it's kind of been our career is in education,
Yeah.
How did you land on Thailand? How did it become that?
That's a great question. So we were working with an organization out of North Carolina, and most of what they did was church plants, but they also had some schools they had at least one or two schools on every continent that they were sending teachers to, and the teachers would go and they would teach the missionary kids while their parents were out on the field. So we were praying about a couple different schools, and so at the time I was working with the online learning program with Chesterfield County. and my wife was she was homeschooling our boys, and so we'd been praying that God would give us direction, and one of the elders in the church prayed over us and prayed that God would show us the same vision but independent of each other. So we definitely knew that it was from him, because we said we got this big decision.
That's a really good prayer.
It really was. It was powerful. And so that one day I was at work and I had been looking at some of these different schools, and I just was really drawn to this information I found on Thailand, and looking at the culture and the history and looking at the school and the mission and vision of the school. I thought, wow, this is a really cool place. This would be really neat. So I get home that night, and that was her tutoring night. So I come home, she's got dinner ready. I kind of tag in, I eat with the boys, and she goes and tutors, and then she comes back. So while we're eating dinner, I said to the boys, hey guys, I want to show you this really cool information I found. So I opened up the computer and I showed them the information on Thailand. And Mission, who was quite a bit younger then, he goes, no way, Dad. I was like, what? He goes, wait a second. He goes, you were looking at Thailand? And I said, yeah. He goes, we were looking at that same stuff today during homeschool with Mom. And then, so I kind of laughed, and he said, so he looked at his younger brother, and he goes, wait a second. He goes, you're looking at Thailand stuff. We're looking at Thailand stuff. He goes, we're going to Thailand, Jay. And so they're like, yay, and so I kind of laughed. And then that prayer that I had just prayed probably a week prior, what came back to my mind, I was like, wow. So then when my wife came home, I said, yeah, just want to let you know, looks like we're going to Thailand. And so she's like, well, how'd you come up with that decision? So I told her about the prayer, and I told her about what had happened with that conversation. So we started praying together. Okay, Lord, if this is the door that you want us to go through, then you open it and we'll go. And immediately everything opened up. It was just so crazy how he aligned everything with, church speaking events and support raising and all that kind of stuff. And had one bit of a hiccup where we got delayed, which at first we were thinking, okay, why are we delayed? Well, it turned out that my mom was ended up dying of liver cancer, and so we were delayed for a year. And because we were delayed, I was able to be there with her when she passed, and she was saved. So I knew that she was in a good place. But thinking if we had gone initially like the original schedule was, the four of us would have been overseas when she passed.
Right.
And so it was a real nice God blessing.
So the delay was not initially because of her.
I think that was part of it.
Oh, it was.
But I think I think because, and there were other factors, where there were other connections we were able to make with other people in other churches in that second year. So it was really, it was just really neat to see how God kind of aligns all those things in His timetable. We always look at things like, well, I see this and this and this, I think it was Paul that said, we'll plan here and plan this, but really God's going to ordain our steps. He's the one that's going to determine where we go and when, and so being all in His timetable was perfect. So,
did you have to learn Thai?
We tried. At 40 years old, learning a foreign language that's all character based and 6 different tones and everything. It was
tonal languages.
It was challenging.
Are a whole different thing.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. We've adopted girls from China, and I've made very, very futile attempts to learn Chinese. Yeah. And they will say the word, and then I will say the word exactly like they said the word, and I'm wrong.
Yes.
It's frustrating to learn a tonal language.
Exactly.
Where the inflection of your voice going up or down, that's a totally different word.
For sure.
Oh.
You're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I have a fighting chance at Spanish and Italian.
Right.
And and French.
At least
German.
they're using letters.
They have letters. So. But then when you're just looking at something like that, especially at age 40, so you didn't have to be like proficient in it to go.
No, because the school that we worked at was an English-based school, and the community that we lived in was a Thai community, but there were a lot of expats that were there. So there was enough people around that spoke English that we learned what we could with. Just kind of going to the market and getting in a taxi and doing directions. Just enough to kind of get us around, order food at the restaurant. But really, never really, in 6 years, the first 3 years, we really didn't have to learn hardly any. And then we moved to Bangkok the second 3 years. and we were much more immersed in the Thai culture around us.
Okay.
So it became a little more important for us to.
Where were you the first 3 years?
So the first 3 years we were in Chiang Mai, which is northern Thailand. And
Okay.
so there was
That's like much more jungle.
a lot of it was,
northern
yeah. So
Thailand?
Chiang Mai as a city, there was probably 1 million people total in the whole area, just kind of very spread out.
Okay.
Including the suburbs and that, but it was much more of what we would consider more suburban, rural. And then we get to Bangkok, and there's 10 million people, and you're right in the middle of the city. It was a whole completely different experience.
Yeah.
And of course, my wife grew up in a little tiny town in upstate New York. So to go from that to a city like that was pretty overwhelming. So
It's pretty sketchy areas, aren't they? Like Thailand and
where we were wasn't
Bangkok?
bad. We were kind of on the eastern side of Bangkok, but there are some places downtown, and that was it was a very real concern for us that the child trafficking and things that would happen there. That that was part of the reason why we felt we needed to learn at least enough language to have some communication. And of course, it ended up being that we gave our kids cell phones earlier than we initially anticipated. But we said you need to be able to communicate with them.
How old were your boys?
So
they're 6 years in China.
So when we were
Thailand.
we got there. Our oldest son was going into seventh grade, and then our youngest was in third grade.
Oh, okay.
And so they're 4 years apart. And then he actually graduated from the school in Bangkok.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
missioned it. And then our youngest finished middle school. And then, so that was about the time that my mother-in-law wasn't doing well. She had some cancer issues of her own. So we came back after he graduated, came back to the area. And so then ended up, again, back in public school here in the area for a couple of years. And then God opened the door for us to move into where we are now at Richmond Christian. So
what's the overall feel of the Sharp family Thailand experience, right? Like if you asked your sons or your wife, how was it? How do y'all feel about your 6 years that you spent doing that?
Man, I want to tell you about a great way to support this ministry. On the Men's Alliance support page, we've just created a brand new donor level called MA Nation. MA Nation is a way to support Men's Alliance for just $9 a month. $9 a month will help support the growth of Men's Alliance. As we are spreading across this country, we are planting over a dozen tribes each month. That's an entire region, right? Every 12 tribes is a region. Every 12 regions is a division. We are growing by an entire region every month. That means we need 12 tribe leaders and a region leader every single month just to keep up with the growth that God is doing through Men's Alliance. We need your support in order to keep this going, in order to keep up this level of support to all the tribe leaders and region leaders and division leaders and workout chiefs and devotion chiefs and the website and the podcast. $9 a month, guys. Help us put your money into the kingdom. Think about this. This is an opportunity for you guys to get your fingerprints on the ministry of Men's Alliance. We want to invite you to be a part of it with us. We want to ask, even if you're a little strapped for cash and the call sign level of $27.17 per month might be a little out of your reach, we get it. $9 a month or $108 annually will help further this ministry. If you can do that, go to our Men's Alliance Tribe.com website, go to support, click on MA Nation, $9 a month. We want to recognize you. We want to appreciate you by giving you one of our new Men's Alliance donor hats, really cool black hat with a leather MA patch on the front that we're going to send you as a thank you present just for supporting this ministry. $9 a month goes a long way, $108 a year. Just about everybody can spare it. You probably spend more than that every month on Netflix or beer anyway, so put it to a better cause, and that's Men's Alliance. Join MA Nation. We want you to be a part of this ministry, no matter where you live, even if you're a part of a tribe or not. By the way, let me tell you this. If you go to our tribes page and there's not a tribe near you, there's an MA Nation pop-up that's going to give you a chance to get our MA 30 free ebook. And that free ebook is something that I wrote. It has 30 at-home workouts and 30 real-world devotions in it so that you can be sharpened spiritually and physically, become the husband, father, leader God designed you to be, even if you don't live near a tribe. We want you in MA Nation. We want to give you that free ebook. If you support us at least $9 a month, we want to send you our donor hat. We're doing great things this year because God is bringing us the men, the support, the team, the families to keep furthering this ministry with either their time or their talent or their treasure. We want you to be a part of it with us. Go to men'salliancetribe.com, click on support, join MA Nation.
Overall, very positive.
Okay.
It really was. We met a lot of great people. Had some opportunities to do some ministry, and it was challenging. A lot of people think missionary community, it's like, oh, everybody loves each other and everybody's all getting along and it's all great. And it was very good, but so many people are so focused on their specific ministry. Sometimes it was really hard to make some real connections. And
we never see that here.
No, yeah, we haven't experienced that.
yeah, exactly.
We're all Christians trying to do men's ministry, right? This is going to all work out.
Yeah, we're all part of the same team.
Exactly. We definitely missed the fruit. The fresh fruit was amazing. But yeah, we still have a lot of friends from basically every continent that we still stay in touch with, through social media and stuff. So that's really good. And, the internet has really kind of opened that up for us to be able to keep those connections and things. So, but no, it was good. There were challenging times.
What were some of your big challenges?
Language, of course, was a big barrier. Especially when we got to Bangkok, we found out that, like you go into a store, for example, and go into the mall, and then, they had malls like what we would have here, where you walk into the mall and go into a store and you want to talk to one of the employees in English, and most of the English they knew was "one moment, please." And they would go, and my first experience with that was, okay, they're going to get somebody who speaks English. Well, they disappeared, and I sat there for 20 minutes and waited. Nobody came back because nobody really spoke enough English that they felt comfortable enough to be able to, to come back and have a conversation with me. And I didn't know enough Thai. Like the Thai that I knew, apparently I knew it well enough that it sounded really natural. So when I would speak those little phrases that I knew to a Thai person, their thought was, "Oh, he's fluent in the language," and they just start going, and I'm just like, "Whoa, you're way past my level of vocabulary." So that was probably the biggest challenge, and being in a place where there, you hear stories about kids that accept Christ from Buddhist families or other families that end up getting kicked out or worse.
Yeah.
And that was a very real situation that we had to walk a very, very delicate line sometimes with some of our families where kids would come to the international school, and in Chiang Mai it was 90% missionary kids. So it was mostly kind of discipleship, where the school in Bangkok was about 30% missionary kids, and the rest were Thai nationals and international business and diplomat kids and stuff like that. So, a lot more ministry opportunity, but a lot more delicate chances for, where you had to really be careful with kids to lead them to Christ, but then, try to help them in a way, almost conceal it from their parents, and so it was a very hard road for those kids. It was very difficult for us to be able to minister in a way where we could help them grow in their faith, but not do it in a way where they end up getting themselves in trouble, and we. That's
a balancing act.
It really was. And of course, being 12 time zones away from family, was a real challenge, especially when my stepmom got sick. There was a time where my wife actually had to come back and spend the whole first semester almost of missions senior year having to be here in the States to take care of her mom. So that was, it was, those were some definite challenges. But when you talk to our boys, they will tell you that overall it was a very positive experience, that they got to see the world from a much more broad perspective.
That's
a lot
like
of their friends.
You can't overstate that.
No.
It's so
And it was hard for them coming
Powerful.
back, honestly, coming back to their same friends that they had left who never went anywhere. And now they've got this big global kind of perspective. They've got friends on every continent, and they've got friends that spoke all these different languages. And they come back to Chesterfield, and a lot of their friends never
left the
area,
town.
and that was, it was an adjustment for them, for sure.
What was the longest stretch of time that you or anybody in your family went, like, before coming back? Like, there for, like, X number of months or years? We
were, the first 2 years, we thought we were going to have to come back and raise more support after the first year. And it turned out that we were very frugal with our spending, and, people are kind of blown away when they find out that we basically, our family of four lived on about $6,000 that first year of, paying everything, food, everything. But God was so abundant and so gracious, and that everything that we needed was always provided, so we never had to go without. We never had to, to really struggle. He just blessed us throughout the whole time. And, so we were able to stay the first 2 years. And then after that, we were able to come back every summer and at least come for a few weeks, to kind of reconnect with family and friends. Sometimes kind of look at the support situation and, and try to get a little bit more of that kind of shored up. Because, when you're on mission, you've got, people kind of come and go. Their circumstances change, and some people, they lose a job or they have a job change or something, and then some support drops off, but then other people can kind of, be there to pick it up. So fortunately, the job in Bangkok was a leadership, a middle school principal position.
Oh, okay.
So the school wasn't a missionary school per se. So we ended up actually stepping away from the mission organization during those 3 years, because the salary that I was making was more than what we were making with the support and being on the mission field. So still very much, ministering to kids, still very much, doing kingdom work, but it was a different perspective. So.
Wow. So was that the first time you were a school administrator?
Yes. Yeah. The two schools that I worked at there, I worked as an assistant principal in the first school for half the time we were there. And then the 3 years that we were in Bangkok, I was the middle school principal. So,
and, I think one of like the stereotypes of like a lot of people's like biggest fear of going all in for Christ is that he's going to send them to be a missionary somewhere.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, I don't want to, kind of like give Jesus everything. What if he makes me go be a missionary in the jungle?
Right.
What would you say to people with that kind of concern?
I would say, be open with the Lord, and God, he knows, right? So you can be honest, but he already knows your heart. But, what we found was, we never pictured ourselves going overseas. That was never like a thing that we were like, yeah, someday we're going to be missionaries overseas. But we always figured, we're going to be lifetime educators here in the States. And, when we got that call, when we felt like the Lord was leading us, we immediately had peace. We just knew that was the direction he was calling us. And then all of what we needed, he provided in exactly the right time. So any training we needed, any funding that we needed, being able to even sell our house. We had a house here in Chesterfield, and it was at a time when the market was really bad. And, a lot of people are like, why are you putting a house on the market now? Yeah. I'm like, well, this is what God told us, And so we actually left with the house still on the market. And we managed to, the guy that actually, the realtor that helped us sell the house was actually the same one that helped us buy it when we moved to Virginia, which was kind of cool. And then he was also on our support team, so it was a great connection. So, he was able to help us sell the house while we were in Chiang Mai. But I would say, just be open to the Lord, and he'll call you where he wants you to serve, and then he will equip you with everything you need to do it. There was never a time where we felt like, we're in a place doing something that we are absolutely just not prepared for. Mm-hmm. Like I said, there was times it was overwhelming. There was a lot. There's Thailand is interesting because in I think over 100 years of missions work that's been done there, less than 1% of the population is what we would consider evangelical Christian. And part of it is because a lot of the Thai people, they're very open to hearing about Jesus. But because of the nature of Buddhism, they've got all these gods for everything. So when you share Jesus with them and you say, do you want to accept Jesus as your Savior? Oh, yeah, I definitely want to do that. And they'll say the sinner's prayer and everything. And then they kind of take Jesus and put him on the shelf with all the other
They
guys.
add him to the list.
And so it's hard for Westerners to come in
that's interesting.
and minister. So really, the biggest transformation we saw was when Thai Christians would minister to their own people. Because part of the concern with Westerners is you've got to build relationship first.
Yeah.
And that could take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years sometimes to build enough relationship with the Thai family that when you truly start to share faith and they see it in your life for all that time, that maybe they're more open to receive it. And that ended up, we found out a lot of the other missions teams that were around us were being pulled and sent to other places in the world because the ROI, I suppose, from the missions perspective was too low for the amount of time you had to invest and the number of converts you were getting. They felt they were better used in other places. So a lot of our friends ended up being relocated to other places around the world through their organization because it was they just weren't getting that.
Did they ever get relocated against their will?
Sometimes there was a couple of organizations were basically like, it's kind of like in the military.
Like you're
you
going,
get your orders and you're going.
We don't want to go. We're doing good work here.
Exactly. And they say, well, you're going to go and you're going to do that ministry here. And it was hard. It was hard for them, especially when you're in a place for a while and you kind of lay down some roots and then you kind of get to the point where it's like, well, we know we're here until we're not. And that's kind of the mindset that you take.
Mm-hmm. If you had to do it all over again, would you do anything different?
I would probably try to learn the language more before we left. It was funny because we got a hold of this program that was trying to teach us Thai, and so that ended up being part of my wife's homeschool curriculum with our boys was trying to teach through this. It was Rosetta Stone, and it's a great program, but like we're learning phrases like, the boy is under the airplane and the girl is on the table. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't ever imagine myself using a phrase like that.
Yeah, where's the library?
So, I'm thinking, okay, tell me how to get back home. Tell me how to, how to get to the mall. So I think if we had done more of that, that probably would have come, with that. But really the best language lessons we had were, standing at the market and, talking to the person and in broken Thai that we had and trying to learn the names of things. And, you end up doing a lot of almost charades, kind of pointing and laughing and, and you kind of just have a good time with it. But it was cool the way when you built relationships with the local people at the markets, for example, they see you coming and their face lights right up, and it's just really cool to go and have those connections. But definitely the language would be a big one that we would do first before we got. But part of the problem was it happened so fast, though. From the time that we got commissioned to where we were, getting ready to get on the plane, it was probably a little over a year. And normally they say you spend 2 years just kind of in pre-training, just learning the language and culture and things. And that was the other challenge too, is not knowing the culture. There were some times where we said and did some things that were very offensive.
Right.
That, our Thai teachers that worked with us were very gracious, because they were Christians. But there was some challenges there with.
Can you give us an example?
Well, just
something that's offensive in Thai culture.
So if you, the person's head is considered kind of sacred, and the feet are considered very dirty.
Right.
So you never use your feet for anything. So like, it's common for us, you walk in from the grocery store, you got your handful of bags, you kind of pull the door, you kick it with your foot or whatever, and then you walk in. They would never use their foot for anything.
Oh, wow.
Except walking. When you walk into a house, all the shoes come off before you enter. There was, they were, even the Christians, it was interesting, the take that they had on what they call saving face culture, where you don't say things to hurt somebody's feelings or, and of course for me, growing up in upstate New York, very cold culture, very cold climate culture, I'm going to tell it like it is. You know, it's just, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to hurt your feelings, but I'm going to just tell you the truth. And you don't always tell the truth in Thai culture because you are more interested in saving face. So, and the example we got from one of our Thai friends was, you know, I said, well, if we, let's say we had a really bad haircut and it looked terrible, would you tell us? I said, oh no. We would say it looks beautiful. You know, they would, their take on it was, I'd rather lie and make you feel good than tell you the truth and possibly hurt your feelings. Well, that wasn't the way I grew up, you know, so, I mean, we weren't harsh, but we were just truthful, you know, and sometimes that came across as being very insincere, you know.
That is something that if you've you know, grown up and been in America your whole life, you probably don't realize is very uniquely American.
Exactly.
And probably the most outrageous example of that I've ever heard of is Korean Airlines. So I was aviation safety, and I've studied lots of aircraft mishaps and listened to the black boxes and studied the accident reports and stuff. And there was a famous Korean Airlines crash because of that very reason. It was a very young Korean co-pilot and a much older senior Korean aircraft commander. And he did not feel, the younger guy did not feel like he could appropriately speak up and tell him that the gear was not down. Now you think, like, from an American perspective, we're like 100 times out of 100, I would have zero problem. But the professional deference, you know, they're in place in their culture is so hard to overcome. He would rather just crash than say something.
Try to dishonor him or
dishonorable. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And man, when I learned that, I was like, oh my goodness, you know. And so we have to teach these cockpit communication skills, you know, in aviation safety, like you're talking about. Like, hey, it's okay to speak up. It's okay to say, your house is on fire. You should not go back to that barber. Those kind of things. But like, we don't realize, like, that's an American thing.
Yes, for sure.
Other cultures, they look at us and they're just aghast that we would just say that right out loud.
Oh yeah. It's unfortunately there's a very real there's a perception in a lot of other countries that Americans are rude because we're honest, because we tell the truth, because we want to communicate effectively, but sometimes that comes across as rude or comes across as disrespectful, and you're right, it's, you know, there's such a hierarchy in a lot of Asian cultures that, you know, that Western countries just don't get, especially Americans just don't understand that.
It's so funny that you guys use a haircut. It's like, it's all making sense to me now, because there was this barbershop in Virginia Beach that was an Asian barbershop. It was all old Asian men in there who would give haircuts, and they were terrible barbers. And my friend he found this place, and he took me as a joke, like, oh, this is the best place ever. We'll get you a haircut, get you nice fade.
That's a good joke.
You know, it's like, great, it gets you, you know, I was in the Marines at the time, so I'm like, yeah, I need a fade, I want it like this. And like, he like basically cut a square in the back of my head, no fade, just a hard, like, shaved it. I had like a square bowl cut kind of a thing, and he's just over in the corner dying laughing. And so then I'm like, so yeah, like, this was awesome. Like, so we just would take people there, but I guess they wouldn't tell each other that we're all bad barbers, you know. It's like, I wonder if that's like,
maybe they knew what you guys were doing and they were just playing to it.
Maybe, but we would always take new friends, like, we gotta take you to this great barbershop.
That's awesome. Funny. That's funny. Yeah, there's you know, I've gone through immigration a lot in some Middle Eastern countries where if you hand them your papers, if you hand them your ID, if you hand them your passport with your left hand,
oh, you're right.
Like, you might as well just flip them off.
Oh yeah.
Right, like, they're pulling you aside and you're probably getting deported.
Yeah,
you know?
that's definitely
those little things.
one.
Like, if nobody tells you culturally,
Yeah.
hey, listen, you better hand them this in your right hand.
Did you eat any of the street food? Did you see anything? Or like, I'm not eating that.
Oh, absolutely. If I can't identify it, I'm not going to eat it. Now, my boys are much more adventurous when it comes to food.
Yeah.
But we found out very quickly that there are certain people that you trust in the expat community to give you direction as far as, go there because that's food that Westerners can eat, but don't go there. Part of the issue, honestly, is the water.
Yeah.
Because, Thai people, they grow up in it. They from the time they're conceived, so they're used to whatever's in the water. And, but yeah, for Westerners, it could usually end up in a trip to the hospital or can be really bad. But, so we definitely took the advice of others who had been there longer to say, go to these places, they're safe, and of course there's the, like when it comes to spicy food, there's spicy and then there's Thai spicy.
Thai spicy is a different thing.
And it's a whole different level. And, to see on these little carts that have soup, for example, these noodle soups and stuff on the side of the road. And, you see these little tiny Thai women getting this bowl of soup, and they're taking one of the, those kind of scooper spoons there and scooping in the red pepper flakes and just taking like 2 or 3 of those and just dropping them in there. And I'm going there, like my eyes water walking past it, I'm like, there's no way. But then, then you see these guys on these like 3-wheel motorcycles with, we would call them probably hot dogs or sausage links that they had like hanging on these racks that were hanging off the back of the cart. And as they're driving through Bangkok, through the traffic with these things just kind of, flopping in the breeze behind them, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to eat that. There's no way that I'm going to go near that cart, So yeah, there's definitely places where you say, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. And then others, you're like, yeah, that's safe. We can go there. So
yeah, I went to Thailand once while I was in the Air Force, and the instruction was, don't drink anything unless you open the can or bottle yourself.
Exactly.
And then that also means no ice. You can't have ice in anything.
Yes.
Because that's their water.
Right. For sure.
So I was drinking a lot of warm cans of Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, ice in drinks it's not, it's kind of more of an American thing than a lot of other places.
You go to like Europe and you get an icy Coke, it's got 1 or 2 cubes.
Yep. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, man. Well, one of the things I've noticed with, so when we lived in Okinawa, my wife never came back to the States for 3 years. She didn't visit. She didn't do it. Like, I was flying back and forth a lot, but she was there for 3 years. And what we noticed was she experienced real big culture shock when she came back to America. Like, coming back to America was just like overwhelming. And you see it from the perspective of a foreigner coming to America. And I'm wondering, did your wife or kids or did you guys experience that when you come back?
We did, yeah. I mean, even though we had come back for a few weeks each summer, we never, like, we were just there. We spent so much time on the road, right? Visiting friends, visiting family, raising support. We never really like kind of sat down and sort of took everything in. And then, coming back, it was hard because when we left, there was it was around 2009, 2010, and we were starting to see a lot of church and racial reconciliation that was starting to happen in the Richmond area. Pastors were coming together, they were praying together, they were meeting together, they were repenting to each other, and we were starting to hear a lot of real positive momentum, and so we were excited about that. And so then, fast forward 6 years, we come back and, we move back in to the area and we get settled back in, and there's just so much anger and distrust and hatred, and it was hard for us, coming from a place where if there was going to be any anger, you weren't going to see it. It was definitely going to be kept, kept in the background or just never come to the forefront at all. And then, to just come back and just to see the state that the nation was in was really heartbreaking, but it really helped us to really kind of double down in our resolve to really be praying for others and praying for that reconciliation and praying for restoration, for different churches and different groups and things. And, and it was great because the schools that we ended up working in were both very, very culturally and ethnically diverse. And so, having the experience that we had overseas in, working in two different schools where literally there were teachers and students from every continent that were there, and so, you talk about true melting pot, it was like everything was just so, just so different. And it was a very, very global experience. And then, to be able to bring that back for all of us I think that probably helped us to cope with a lot of what we saw probably easier than if we had just not had that experience, and then came back. And even, working in the school that we're in now, at Richmond Christian, you've got so many different churches and denominations that are part of the school, but it's still Christ-centered. Everybody still has that personal relationship with Christ, but there's little nuances of, Baptist and Methodist and Presbyterian and, different things that, can sometimes not get in the way, but kind of slow down some of the progress you want to make or get in the way of, just trying to have effective communication about, what's the most important thing, which is Christ, So having that experience has really helped us with that, and seeing different perspectives and being more open to there's other ways of looking at things. There's sometimes, because I get in my head sometimes like this is the way I'm going to do it and that's it. And now I'm kind of like, just step back and kind of look at that a little bit more of a broad picture. So
I think that's a really good point that every Christian should kind of keep in mind is give a little bit of latitude, on some non-essentials,
Right.
You said something I want to touch on. Before you guys went to Thailand, when you and your wife were both teaching in a public school, your boys were homeschooled?
They were in public school at first. Then she pulled them for different reasons, pulled them and homeschooled them for a couple of years. And then the last year we were here, I was still working with Chesterfield County, and she actually took a job with another local private school and was working there for 1 year as a math teacher. And then both boys went there to the last year that they were here in the States was at that private Christian school. So they've seen everything. They've seen public school, private school, homeschool.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, right? So, you've got a lot of school experience.
Yes.
In America, overseas, public, private, home.
Yeah.
Tell us your thoughts on that. What do you recommend for families?
Wow.
What are some cautions and warnings?
Well, obviously as a believer, I say that a lot of families go the homeschool route, and I get that. They feel like, really the way we feel at RCS is, parents are the primary educator. God has set that up for their children. Our job is to come alongside them and support them in that. So if you have the capability as a parent to do it, a lot of parents are going to do the homeschool route. And, and there's we've seen some of the smartest, most well-rounded kids we've seen have come out of a homeschool experience. If you're not comfortable with doing, with the teaching part, and a lot of times what we see is we'll get kids that will be homeschooled up to like maybe upper elementary or middle school, and the parents are like, okay, I'm at my limit. This is as far as I can go.
Right.
So now I want to go somewhere else. Well, unfortunately there's so much going on in the public schools that are very contrary to Christ and very anti-Christian that, the parents are looking for something else, and so, so the nice thing about the Christian school is that, you're getting the same values that you teach at home as a believer, and they're getting the academics from a Christian perspective. So everything that happens at school, whether it's the academics, it's sports, it's clubs, everything that we do, all has Christ at the center. Yeah. So, I would say that would be one of the huge benefits of being at a school like RCS is that you've got that experience that your coaches, your teachers, your administrators, everybody is a believer. Everybody at the school, even our substitutes, have to have that personal relationship with Christ. As our vision statement is educating hearts and minds for Christ. So if you don't live that and you don't know what that means, then we can't have you influencing our students, you know. So we make sure that everybody that's working there has that personal perspective in their own life, that they're living it out.
Yeah. You know, I'm a product of Christian school. Went to a private Christian school in North Carolina, and you know, we've put our kids have gone through public school, private school, and homeschool. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of done the gamut with all four of ours. And one of the things I heard a lot growing up, and I hear today with, you know, with our kids, is people will say things like, well, your kids, everything, you know, that happens bad in a public school, it still happens in a private school. Like, they're not going to, like, not be exposed to it, right? Mm-hmm. You hear this. Like, there's still these problems. You're not mm-hmm. escaping all the problems. And I think there's a little bit of truth to it. Mm-hmm. You know, like, yeah, there's still going to be some of the same problems that happen there. But to me, kind of like what you said, and I want to highlight is, yeah, maybe, but the big difference is the faculty's not going to be condoning it.
Right.
It's like, yeah, there might be some kids with a drug problem or whatever at a private Christian school. Sure. But the faculty there is actually, like, aligned with you as the Christian parent. Yeah. And they're not just turning a blind eye and condoning it. Same thing comes with, like, anything,
or you know, identity issue, or
identity, sexuality, all these things. They might all still happen at the private school, but I think parents need to understand that's not the point. The actual point is the faculty there on your side, or actually
everyone's
trying to subvert you,
right?
You know,
men, are you struggling with anxiety, depression, addiction, past trauma, relationships, marriage? Maybe you're going through divorce, separation. What about food, fitness? What about parenting? If you are struggling on any of these battlefields that life throws at us, I want to tell you to go to battlefieldcoaching.com. Battlefieldcoaching.com is a men's alliance ministry where you can get matched with a certified coach who has already served and fought on that battlefield that you're currently on. Battlefield coaches are men's alliance tribesmen who are certified and insured and who have been on that battlefield that you're on now, and they can help you through it. Coaching is not counseling. Coaching is focused on your future, not on your past. Go to battlefieldcoaching.com. Get the help you need to become the man God designed you to be.
Yeah, that's really, you know, the way it's addressed, the way it's handled is really the big difference. Like you say, you know, to your point about the faculty, you know, they all have that perspective. So, you know, when kids have a disagreement, if there's, you know, a fight or whatever, you know, kids, a yelling match, whatever, pushing and shoving, you know, they're kids, right? So, you know, they don't, just because they're at a Christian school doesn't mean that they're not going to have kid issues. So, you know, the difference is when it comes to an administrator, for example, you know, they're not just going to either put it aside because they've got bigger fish to fry or whatever. They're going to sit down with those students. And, you know, my principals will know that if two students need mediation, they're going to sit them down and they're going to mediate them. They're going to walk them through biblically, you know, what does it mean to resolve conflict according to God's word? And, you know, we believe very much in Matthew 18 principles, so that if there's any kind of concern or conflict, you know, you need to go to the person and you need to do it biblically. And, you know, so they'll walk through that with them. But, you know, one of the things that is an advantage, I think, for a school like ours is that, you know, we can be selective with the students that come in. So, you know, we don't expect perfection, of course, because nobody's perfect. But, you know, if a student comes in and, you know, maybe they got a little bit of discipline, maybe they've had some, you know, a little rough around the edges or whatever, and, you know, they've had some, you know, kind of minor things over time. I want to meet with that kid. I want to hear their story. I want to hear, okay, what did you learn? You know, what perspective are they taking? Are they going to come from a perspective of, hey, I know I screwed up and this is what I should have done differently and this is what I learned? Or are they going to be like, you know, I was their fault and everybody else's fault and I'm not going to take any responsibility? if they're teachable, if they're coachable, if it looks like they're trying to learn through their experiences, then that's somebody that we can partner with. And the parents on board with that and that partnership, then, because we have to have partnership with parents. I mean, it has to be, both sides are working, kind of the way we explain it is you've got a stool with 3 legs, one leg is the church and one is the school and one is the home. And when all 3 are working together, then it's a stable seat for that student, and then they can thrive and flourish. So, but if we get students that come in and they've got significant discipline, they've got, it's even right in our handbook, if they've been expelled from another school, we're not even going to consider it because we have a certain culture that we're trying to establish and maintain at the school, that, again, not that they could never come. We've had students that we've denied admissions, but we say, come back in a couple of years and show us that you can improve in this and this and this, and they have. And,
well, that's good.
We have had a couple kids that have come back, and we look at their updated record, and we get to know them. They're a little more mature. They made some better choices, and they end up graduating from the school. So it's a very selective process. But even things like with transgender issues and gender identity, those are things that we will not tolerate as a school. We just can't. Biblically, it's very clear what God's word says. And so, if we have a family that that may be living that kind of lifestyle, we're very clear right up front with them that, look, we expect what God's word says about family, what God's word says about husbands and wives, and and if you're not living in, according to his word, then, we can't partner with that, because that's part of that biblical partnership. So, so that helps us to kind of establish and maintain that culture that, that we're.
Have you gotten any pushback on that? Have you ever had a family, want to put their transgender kid in and not get allowed, and they make a big scene?
No, not that part. We did have one family once that, that came and just said, hey, we have a, how did they put it? Alternative family structure was the way that they said it. And so we said, well, if that aligns with these scriptures that we sent back to them, where God's word was very clear about homosexuality and that kind of thing, if you align with that, then we can partner. And then we never heard back. So
that was nice.
So yeah,
that went well.
But again, we do have, because we're, as a private Christian school, we do have those biblical standards that we can stand on, that we can say these are what our admissions process is based on, and again, it's not about, people being perfect or, hey, get saved and come and see us. We have a lot of families that, that some are, every day the church doors open, they're there, and we've got some families that, they don't, they rarely, if ever, go to church, but they're open. They're open to partnership. They're open to the fact, and we're right up front with them. Your son or daughter is going to get the gospel in everything, in every class, in chapel, in sports, in clubs. Like every opportunity we get, we're going to be witnessing to your child, just so you know. And and as long as they're willing to be open to that and to partner with that, then we do. And we've had some really amazing stories where kids come in and they don't know the Lord, they don't go to church. We had one young man who got saved and wanted to start getting connected to church. So he basically forced his parents to start bringing him to youth group. And so they started going, then the parents started going to church, and then the parents got saved.
Yeah.
And so, those are success stories that we love to hear, of that transformation work that God's doing, in those families. So, it's good.
That's good. One of the things that I used to hear this a lot, and I didn't know why I didn't like it. Like, it bothered me. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I couldn't figure out why. But then one day I heard somebody say it, and I was like, that's it. That's why I've never liked that. So the thing is, you hear a lot of parents who keep their kids in public school. And by the way, I've got a kid in public school, so I'm not against that. Mm-hmm. But if they do it from the mindset of saying, well, we can't just pull your kids out of the world, right, and just totally insulate them. They need to be around unsaved people. So they say it this way: we're supposed to be the light of the world. right? And we shouldn't take the light and hide it, at a private school with all the other lights.
Right.
And I always heard that, and I was like, I don't like that or agree with that, but I don't know why. Mm-hmm. And then I heard somebody say, yeah, you're supposed to be the light of the world after you've grown,
right,
and you've been trained.
Exactly.
And it's like, we're not supposed to send our children
right
onto the front lines to go, hey, y'all go be the light in third grade. You go be the light of the world over there, with your transgender teacher, right? And like, I was like, that's it. That's the problem, right? And so I think parents use that line because it sounds very good. Oh, like we're sending our lights into the mission field.
Makes them feel better.
Well, who's going to convert who in that scenario, right? How equipped is your third and fourth grader for having these conversations about worldviews? So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, we're gonna train our children for 18 years. And then send them.
Exactly.
Right. And so, of course, we're all sending our kids into the world, unless you're Amish. Right. It's like eventually, you're going to send them out into college or into career or whatever. So it's not really a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
Exactly.
When are we going to do that? And I probably would argue against doing it in elementary school.
For sure. I mean, I would, another example I use with people is, you don't take a first semester med student and put them as kind of the lead surgeon in a brain surgery.
There you go. That's a good one.
They need to have the training and the experience. And
doctors got to get experience.
Yep. They've got to get to that point. Like there's a lot of training that has to happen before they even actually, get into the operating room. And, and I agree with you 100% that, our kids, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for them in the world to experience the world after they graduate high school. So, and as it is, the statistics are just abysmal for kids coming out of high school, the Christians coming out of high school and losing their faith or walking away from their faith in the first year or two of college. And, and a lot of those kids are coming through the Christian school, you know? So I agree with you. You gotta build that foundation. You've got to build, they need to know what they know before they can go out there and try to be the light, try to convert other people.
That's right. Okay, I want to pivot over to carry the fire.
Okay.
Because you're what we might categorize as a professional Christian.
Okay.
Right? Look at this guy's like the principal of a Christian school, missionary for 6 years to Thailand. Not typical. Not your typical American Christian. So with all that about your background and your knowledge and stuff, tell us what was kind of your experience going through Carry the Fire? What was that like for you?
Well, I found out very early on when we were doing the weekly class meetings that that professional Christian side of me actually was a detriment, because in the first 3 times that I had the chance to kind of step up and kind of, step in front of the crowd, so to speak, the feedback I got on all 3 times was, you talk too much. You talk too long. They always seem to hit questions at, like, because I have a science background. So, if I get a question about science or evolution or something like that, I'm like, oh, I'm all about this, baby. Let's go.
Sometimes the thing that we know the most about or most passionate about can actually be a detriment.
Exactly.
Because we love it and we know about it and we want to talk about it.
And so the feedback I got all 3 times was, get to the Romans road sooner. So that was really good for me, because, like you say, you spend your 30 years in education where you're ministering to kids. I mean, that has been our life, has been ministering to teenagers. And so we're planting seeds, we're praying with kids, we're pointing them to Christ. But there's so much that you could tell that the guys that were in our class that probably hadn't been Christians as long, I think it was actually in some ways a little better for them, because they didn't have all that experience they were drawing from, and so they tend to be a little more tentative up front, but then they were trying to make sure they hit those points right away, and so they were able to really kind of focus in a little better on kind of what was the kind of meat of that conversation. So that part was really good for me. It really helped me to, to be able to say, okay, yeah, you do, you talk too much, and that's, you got to just bring it back and, listen more and ask more questions.
Yeah.
And so that was really good. And then, going up to the actual FTX, it was, I didn't really know what to expect. You hear some things, but the things I was hearing was, it's a great experience. It's going to be really challenging, and but just do what you think is right. And I got so tired of hearing that phrase for weeks. Just do what you think is right. What do you think is the best way to do that?
Who was your class leader, by the way? Did you have?
So we had Seamus and
Okay.
oh goodness. Yeah, well, he was the lead class, the head, leader, and so he was. It was good. Like he and some of the other guys that came onto the call also.
Oh yeah, you get a lot of different.
They were brutal. They like kind of went right at it.
Seamus was your class leader at the FTX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we got there and the the very first experience, which I'm not going to obviously, I'm going to keep it to myself as far as what
beep
it was.
out anything that we need.
From the where you had said, okay, FTX starts now, and then that very first activity we did was, I didn't do well with it, honestly.
Mentally.
And I just really thought to myself, okay, I said I was going to stay, and I'm going to stick it out, and I'm that's just the way I am. I'm too hard-headed to give up, so I'm going to just push through it, But it was so good because the way we had to process with so many different things going on at the same time, and having to keep the focus on, all those different things was really a huge benefit. It was a great experience. As I remember from basic training, it was, this is the task and this is what we're doing, and so this was the focus. And then we go on to a new task, and then this is the focus and this is what you do. Where here it was, you've got the task and the apologetics and the leadership part, and you're juggling all these very different components that are all kind of coming together at the same time. And, and along with just really being just, kind of mentally and physically kind of, stretched. And it was, it really was a great experience, really was and being able to walk through it with the guys that we had, been spending weeks with, online, and not like we actually got together as a group at Cane's and had lunch on our way over to the FTX, and it was a lot of, what do you think's going to happen? I don't know. What do you think? And so we kind of, we're sort of throwing spitballing ideas out there. We had no idea what we're talking about,
Yeah.
But no, it was just, like I said, it was a great experience, and I think every guy needs to go through it. Really, it was, really was very life changing in a lot of ways. So.
That's awesome. We have a lot of dads and sons that have gone through it in different classes, in the same classes, and with adult sons and with teenage sons. And so we've seen a lot of different combinations. But I think that the way you and Mission did it, adult son and same class.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to do it.
It was really,
I think
really
adult son and dad, same class. Teenage son and dad, separate class.
Yeah.
I think that's what I've come to figure out. I've come to that conclusion after seeing about 4 or 5 iterations of it. And so that was neat from our perspective, seeing the two of you guys go through that together. And man, you just you gave us, a lot of your story, a lot of your life story, and then you just casually alluded to some prior military service there right at the end. We didn't even get to that. So
right.
what did you do there?
So I started off in the Army Reserve in college.
Okay.
Just mainly for the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Get some extra cash in my pocket. And then we, in 91, our unit got activated for Desert Storm.
Oh, wow.
And so, we...
You don't look that old.
Thanks. Yeah, it was...
Like Desert Storm.
Yep. Yeah, it's... what am I, 57 now? 58? Something like that?
Oh, man.
Yeah, so...
Whatever you're doing, you look great. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Men's Alliance.
So it totally...
Fountain
Yeah,
Youth.
those early Saturday workouts, man. That's what... Everybody, y'all need to be there.
That's right.
My first deployment, by the way, was, global war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan. And my first deployment was my aircraft commander's last deployment.
Okay.
And we're flying along one day, and he's talking about flying in Gulf War I, Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
Right.
And another guy in the aircraft was like, I think my elementary school class was sending you guys thank you card for your service.
Yeah,
Right.
that's good. That's good. Yeah, definitely. So we spent 6 months. So it actually,
In Saudi or?
it was kind of cool the way it worked out. We were originally slated for Saudi Arabia. And when we got to Fort Dix and we were in processing, our unit was pretty small. So the company was really small. So they had a bunch of folks that were attaching to us to get us to capacity. And it took forever. It took almost 2 weeks, I think, for us to get everybody there, get everybody past through the medical and all that, get cleared and everything. Some guys had some medical issues they had to work through and things. So what ended up happening, we had the 60th Ordnance out of Germany was sent to the Gulf. And then we ended up going and taking their place in Germany.
Okay.
So most of the ammunition that came into country was coming from our unit from Germany. So we were loading it up on rail cars, and they were taking it to Holland, putting it on ships, bringing it around, and then bringing it to the desert. So we, so of course some of our guys were like, oh yeah, Germany, that's easy, it's a cushy job, whatever. Well, of course it's Germany in the winter, so it was, and the railhead was basically, we found out afterwards that back in World War II, it was a major transfer point for prisoners of war to the different concentration camps. They were loaded on trains there and shipped out. And so we were loading 26 rail cars a day with ammunition that was just, working 16-hour days, shipping it out.
Wow.
Next day we come back and there's a fresh empty train there for us.
You never know what you're going to get when you join the Army.
Exactly.
You
Well,
know what you're gonna
so
get.
what we found out, though, the last week that we were in country, we found out that the railhead we worked on was actually in one of the top 5 terrorist targets in Europe.
Really?
And so I'm thinking, well, I'm glad they didn't tell some of these good old boys that was the case when we first got there, because they would have probably just packed their bags and left.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was, that was a real great experience too. And, we were fully prepared to go wherever we needed to go,
Sure.
What was your MOS?
It was ammunition specialist, 55
Okay.
Bravo. So they've changed the number since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were the guys just loading all the conventional stuff, and and it was kind of cool because some of the guys had written certain messages that we can't say publicly here.
Yeah.
That was always the coolest thing about that job. It's like, man, you guys got to write messages on the bombs.
Yeah, and so when the 60th came back to relieve us, they were like, yeah, we saw some of your notes. Like they actually saw the ammo and had the stuff that we wrote down on there, which was kind of fun. So, but no, it was definitely a great experience, and it was I'd do it all again. I mean, it was very, very worth it. So.
Well, I think we can figure it out from hearing your story, but in your words, tell us how you got your call sign.
So it's kind of interesting when I stood up there and I told them that, they of course are asking, like, well, tell me about yourself. And so, I said, I'm the head of school at Richmond Christian School. I said, go Warriors. And then I said, this was, I just kind of talk a little bit about military experience and different things. And so, they found out that I had done the ammo bit. And so there was Warrior, and there was, I think, Blade and something else were the 3 that they finally settled on. And so then they ended up going with Warrior. And so I thought, okay, I can live with that. That's cool. And I talked to a bunch of guys, and they were like, I was talking to Boost one day, and he's like, look, man, he's like, whatever you think your call sign is going to be, just don't even worry about it, because it's not going to be that. Mm-hmm. So, but what's funny was I thought it'd be kind of a cool call sign, but I never really said anything to anybody. So then on the way, we were going to breakfast afterwards, and I was driving in the car, and I was kind of reflecting back, and I thought, okay, so the mascot of my current school is the Warrior. The mascot at the first public high school I worked at in New York was the Warrior.
Oh, really?
And then the 98th Division that our reserve unit was a part of was called the Iroquois Warriors.
No way.
And so I've got the coin that has 98th Division, and it says Iroquois Warriors on it. And so I was like, wow. So this has like been a part of my life.
Man, that's super
all these
perfect.
years, and I had never really thought about it until it kind of all came together. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Soldier, missionary, educator,
Yeah.
tribesman,
Yeah.
warrior.
That's why I love the call sign ceremonies, because it gives a guy an opportunity just once in his life to brag about himself. Just like, tell me all the coolest things about you. I like that. That's part of it.
yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for sharing your story. This has been
Thanks
awesome.
for having me. This
I
was
enjoyed hearing
really
it.
great. Yeah, I enjoyed being here.
It's good.
To find out more about what we are doing in Men's Alliance, go to men'salliancetribe.com. This will help you find a tribe near you. We have grown so much over the past few years. There are thousands of tribesmen all over the country in hundreds of tribes. We're growing every single week. Go to men'salliancetribe.com, find a tribe near you, or maybe you're the man to start one in your area.